welcome to the Choosing Happiness podcast with me, your host, Rudrani Devi, the Happiness Lady. In these conversations, we will be discussing an uncommon way to find joy in your life with weekly special guests. Did you know you could choose your happy? Won't you come and play and discover how these magical tools could work for you? Let's do this. Well, howdy, y'all. Rudrani Devi, the Happiness Lady, with you again as your host for the Choosing Happiness podcast. And the crowd goes wild. I'm so excited today. And I just realized, before we actually jumped on, that we've actually sat next to each other. I knew she looked familiar before I asked her to be on this podcast, but we were actually in one of Dr. Dane's classes, Choice of Possibilities. I believe it was in Roma, Italy in 2019. And I'm just so delighted because I rediscovered her on another podcast with the Simone Milasas, right? And so I'm just so delighted that she agreed to have this conversation with me. I'm just going to introduce her like, people that don't need a second name, right? Like like Madonna, or like Aretha, even though we know it's Franklin, we don't even have to say that. We can just say Aretha and we know what we're talking about. So without further ado, you guys in podcast land, Nikolett, grazie moltissimo. I'm so grateful that you have agreed to have this conversation with me. Beautiful, beautiful girl. How you be?
Thank you so much. I'm doing really good, and I was really happy. So I just got an email from you through Access website, and I saw your name, and I'm like, yeah, of course, I'm doing this with you. And I really remember because you speak Italian. You're Italian, right?
See,
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, yes.
I mean, yes.
A lot of people don't know that. They think, because the name is Rudrani Devi, that I am, Indian until they see me. But both my parents are Italian, so my first language is Italian. So
Oh, I didn't know that. I
yeah.
thought it's like both. Yeah. So it was immediate connection at the class because I do speak Italian as well. So I remember we were like chatting.
we were. We had a good time. And it's so funny because it was one of those moments where you just now told me that. I'm like, now I know why I recognize this beautiful lady.
But
And I didn't even know your story then.
yeah, and also that was my first class. So you met me immediately. That was my very first class. I had no money back then. I just got divorced. I before I was living in San Francisco, and I just got divorced. I moved back in 2009, 18, before Christmas, and then
But
basically that was
Budapest.
yes to
Okay.
Budapest, to Europe, and then that was in 6 months, and I had no money, nothing. Basically, I was left without anything, and I borrowed money from a friend of mine, and she sent me some money from the US, so I was able to take dance class. But in the meantime, no lunch and no dinners for me. So just I had money for the Airbnb. I got the tick for the event and basically the flight tickets, and then I no money for food and stuff like that.
I would have totally gifted you meals if I had known what was going on in your world. And for you to show up to a class that dynamic, you guys, you have no idea. We get our brains fried so easily these classes. This is this is a newbie showing up at a class that's considered, well, if any of you if you've been to college or taken advanced placement classes, you know that there are certain classes that will totally fry you. It's the same kind of energy where you're getting a lot at once. You're trying to absorb it all and it's so much for your brain that by the end of the day you either want to sleep or have a couple of cocktails. You could have probably slept. You weren't eating or drinking, I imagine. So whatever. Just saying. It's so funny. But here's the thing. That was your first class, but of course you had to take the prereqs for
Yes.
it. So you had taken bars and you had taken foundation. So for some of you listening, you've been involved in access consciousness. If not, please just Google it and more than enough information will show up. So I want to know, you obviously met an American. Sorry, not sorry. And you ended up, in the States. And then you ended up not in the States, but where did you discover access along the way?
Yeah. So in 2015, I had an accident, where I almost lost my left leg. So it was injured, my ankle, and fraction was really bad, and also my wound was open. So I got also an infection, and so basically, I remember those days. It was amazing. Um, so I woke up the next morning. So they took me to the hospital, and my
Okay.
doctor came out of the operation room, told my mom that she's not, she he doesn't think that he can save my leg, but
Yeah.
he will do his best. So my mom's crying outside. They take me to the operation room, and then in 6 hours, they pull me out, pushed me out, and I had a leg. So the next morning, I woke up around like 4 a.m. I see that I have my leg, and I had a huge ice box on my leg, and I was in pain. Like
No.
I was like, I never felt that pain before.
Yeah.
Like my whole body was hurting, but my leg was like crazy. And at the same time, I had something which was really interesting. For the very first time of my life, I woke up and I've had peace.
Mm.
I was just in peace. I was like, wow, I'm alive. I have my leg. Okay, it hurts. And so I had like a journey for the next 9 months, because I was told that they will amputate my leg anyways because my infection got worse. And we had a bunch of conversation with doctors and anyone around me. But at the same time, it was just like I was happy for the first time of my life. And I couldn't
Mm.
I couldn't tell people why. And also my parents and my sister, they are like, what's going on? Like, you got into this accident, you're not able to work, you have no money, and you're still happy. And I was just
Yeah.
like, I don't have to be the same person who I used to be. And I knew from my bones that I'm not going to be a hairdresser anymore. I used to be a hairdresser, also
Mm.
an educator. So I was teaching kids at hair school, and from the outside, I got my perfect life. I was fine. I had a good job. I was living in Budapest, which is a beautiful city, and I got many options to other things to do. But I just wasn't happy.
Yeah.
I felt always like, who's this is not my life. Like, what is this? Like, what is the meaning of life? And I was just like not a happy person.
Mm.
And when this happened to me, I realized I'm not going to be a hairdresser anymore. And my mom was kind of pushing, like, call the clients and talk to the people. I'm like, I'm
Where are
not
you gonna
going
make your
to.
money, daughter? Why are you saying these things? I get it. I totally
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
Wow.
And so when the whole thing happened to me, it's like it was really interesting. It feels like the universe always had my back. It was I wasn't going in a direction where where the life wanted to take me, because now I know I have a bunch of, like, I have a lot of potential in many ways, which I never discovered because I thought I was an idiot. I thought I was just a stupid idiot, and nobody came by and said, hey, you're good, nothing is wrong
Mhm.
with you, anything that is wrong and you think it's wrong is actually not wrong, is your superpower. And
Sure.
so I was always struggling with money. I was always struggling with my body. I was always struggling with things. And when I met the tools of access consciousness, it's just a person showed up in my um, room at the hospital. He is really famous in Hungary. He's a motivational speaker, and he posted a quote on his Facebook page. And a friend of mine tagged me, just like make me happier because he knew what happened to me,
Uh,
and they somehow knew each other. And this person asked him, he's like, hey, who is this girl? She looks interesting to me. And he's like, oh, she just got into an accident and she's in a hospital and she's kind of struggling. They want to cut off her leg. And he was like, hey, I just go and tell her she's going to be fine. So the next day, he came into my room with a bunch of books. I was reading actually his book. It's funny. I was reading his book. He stepped into the room and he's like, oh, that's a nice book. I'm like, you wrote it. And he's like, yeah, I brought you another 6, so you're not gonna be bored while you are here. So he stayed and he's like, you're so interesting. Like this is hospital, there is other 6 people, old woman, all this stuff. And he's like, I I feel actually better to talk to you here than
Mm.
being somewhere else. So he stayed for another 3 hours. We talked, and so he introduced me to my first facilitator, András. He's a Hungarian CF, András Palacsko. You might know him, and I went on one class. He invited me, the guy who came to my room. He invited me to his class,
Mm.
and I had no money to take the class. But when I was reading about his class, I was like, wow, this is interesting. I'm gonna go. And I really don't know how, but I created the money. So I was able to take the class. And it wasn't an access class at the first place. It was Sedona method class, which is a releasing technique. And the whole time he was talking about access consciousness. And I was like, what is this stuff? I
Mm.
want to know more about this. And he was selling books. So I find the first book, How to Become Money Workbook.
I'm teaching
And
that class right now. That's so
yes.
funny.
And
I
so
love
it was
teaching
so
that class.
it was so expensive. It was $30. But in Hungary in 2016, I'm like, $30 for a book? There is only lines in it and 2 questions? Like, what is this? But like the book was pulling me. So I
Yeah.
I I bought the book anyway, and I did the same thing. I had no money for lunch. So I just bought the book. I bought the book and I went home, and the very first time in my life I felt I know this. I don't
Mhm.
understand it, but I know this. And that was my feeling, is like, this book tells me everything I know about life. Why
Yeah,
no one told me about this before?
interesting. It's I'm gonna stop you for just a moment because our lives are so parallel that I sense that maybe it could be a contribution to this conversation. So literally, I was in India in 2008 and was shot point blank range by terrorists and was told I would never walk again. My right femur was shattered. My right tricep was shot out and I got grazed on the right side of my neck. And if it hadn't been for this giant wooden table that these AK-47 bullets went through, which are about 3 inches long, I'm sure my leg would have been blown to bits. In fact, the FBI interviewed me later, and they were like, "We don't even know why you're alive. It doesn't make any sense." But I remember floating up above my body and getting back in, and floating up above my body and getting back in. I'm like, dude, that does not look good. That's a mess. And all I could think of in my head was the two people that are not going to be able to receive this or understand it, whatever we say, receive and access, is my mother, and at the time, I was married to my husband, which, husband, not so much. Anyway, down the road, and I was in a wheelchair for 2 years with a prosthesis, not a prosthetic. Prostheses is when you have a leg or, whatever the body part is, and they put compression around it so the bones can heal, and I had
Mm.
so many multiple fractures that I couldn't get out of bed for a very long time. Bed sores, and I had all this stuff going on. And yet I remembered I had access, I had these tools. And so I really, my job was to, get better. It was like people were telling me you're never going to walk again. I'm like, excuse me, no, no, no. I'm going to figure out a way to get around this. That's not going to be my reality. And I got to a place where I was so giddy, which I think is what you were talking about, where you were happy because I was like, oh my God, not only am I still alive, I got this leg. It's still there. And if it had been blown off, I might not be here. And even more so than that, and I'm not showboating, I'm just saying that the reality was this AK-47 bullet actually landed on my femoral artery. So what the doctors said to me before they put me under was, you may not wake up because we have to remove this bullet, because you're going to have, blood poisoning and all this if we don't remove it. And it's laying on your femoral artery. And it might be the only thing that's keeping you alive, but will eventually kill you, so we have to remove it. So I'm like, "Okay, can we call my soon to be ex-husband? Can we call him and tell him so he'll know where to get the body back?" I mean, that was my line of thinking. And I was in so much pain, I even told them to gas me before they moved me to the table. And then I actually woke up in my room and I went, "Oh, still here." And I just started laughing because I thought, "Man, I'm still here." How amazing is that fucking reality, right? And there was this guy sitting in my room and he said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm okay." And he said, "So can I go now?"
Mm.
And I looked at him and I realized that he was the bellboy from the hotel. And he had actually been in the cab with me and had traveled to the rooms, making sure I was okay before he went home. And I was like, recognize him because I've been tipping, he would every time we'd walk into the hotel, he would like be walking me to the room, carry even if I had like this tiny little bag of something I bought, he would carry it to the room. And I said, "I'm good. Please go home." Because the terrorist attack was still happening. It went on for several days. And he said, "God is good."
Mm.
And it's that moment that I realized, like when you're talking about the joy and nobody could understand it, I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm still fucking here. And what else can I possibly create?" So I know I interrupted you. I feel like we are these kindred
Yeah,
spirits. We have this similar story where nobody understands. Oh my God, all that stuff happened. I'm putting it in quotes for those of you not watching on YouTube now or in the future. I still have a leg. I still have an arm. I know there's a tube in my neck so I can breathe because it's swollen out to here, but I'm still here. How in the world did I create that? So from that space, I want you to continue because I love your story so much. And I know what it is when people look at you and they think you're out of your fucking mind for being joyful. You have no money. Your marriage ended, mine too. You can't for me, I can't walk. I don't know about you. You're like you probably couldn't walk for a while, right? Yeah,
that's
all the things. Was it your right leg or your left leg?
left.
Just curious.
Mm.
Right for me. So there we go. That's the only difference. And please continue with your story. I just can't believe that we sat next to each other and we didn't even know how many similarities that we had. So please continue. You're such a joy.
Just one more thing that I can align with you is I also, so when the accident happened, it was really close by. There was only two people who saw the whole thing because it was a car and me, and the car was the driver was upset because he couldn't go faster, blah blah blah, and then he just pushed me to the curb, and so no one saw that. Only two guys. They had like this small like food box kind of thing, like street food box
Yeah, yeah.
on the street, and they were like kind of closing and cleaning up, and they saw what happened and they ran there, and it was really interesting because everyone around me is like, let's find this person who did this to you, and I was like, I don't care that much, like I don't really care. And so this guy, the next day and the following day, came to my room saying he got the license plate, and I was like, I don't need it, but thank you. And he was just like so helpful. The same story, just like you with the guy. He was just wanting to help me out, and
Sure.
and I was like, I don't need that because I knew, I don't know how, but I just knew it doesn't matter who did this to me. It was my
Yeah.
choice. Because if I wouldn't choose this, I would never, ever change my life because I have created
Thank you.
the fracture was so bad that I was not able to stand behind the chair anymore. I knew I knew that's not going to be my life because I can't do that. There you go.
Right.
And
So
when I learned about the tools, then I realized, okay, that's a great story. So what would it take to be able to stand behind the chair, but just not choose that?
right.
That's all. And so now my leg is fine. So I don't have any joints in my ankle. So basically, anytime they do an X-ray, all the doctor is like shocked. Is like, how can you walk? Like this is not possible. I'm like, do you have some pain? I'm like, no pain. He's like, it's not possible. You have no
Right.
joints. There is no liquids there. He's like, it's not possible. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm good. I go to the gym 6 times a week. I'm good.
I feel you because it's the same way when it's like I walk through when I go to the airport, I have so much shrapnel in my body that I always set off all the alarms. And what I tell them is, you don't want me to walk through there, and I have to show them a document that says, I got shrapnel in my body. And they always think I'm military. So they just walk me through. It's like they don't even ask me, "Oh, thank you for your service," is what usually comes out, so boom, immediate access, it's funny, it is
Mm,
funny, and what's not normal about that is when you have shrapnel in your body, you have blood poisoning, and yet my body managed to encapsulate all the shrapnel in some sort of weird thing that if you do one of those it has to be an MRI, it can't be an X-ray, an MRI that really shows
yeah.
it, something has encapsulated all the shrapnel, and occasionally I have pieces that come up through the scar still. And I'm like, "Oh, it's pointy," and then I wait for it to get enough to where I can get a tweezer and pull it out. It bleeds a little bit, and then, put echinacea on it or whatever, arnica, excuse me, not echinacea, arnica on it, a Band-Aid, and within a couple of days, it's gone because I do cellular memory on it because the
Yeah.
tools work, and it's amazing. I asked my body, "What can we create to make this work?" Because they're telling me eventually your leg's gonna have to come off, like
Wow.
you. They said the same thing. That's why when you say that, I'm like, "Yeah, but my body is so amazing that it knows what's required, to keep it." And, yeah, I don't have twitch muscles in that right leg, and yet I still get on my treadmill. I don't run anymore. I did run the Boston
Yeah.
shortly after all of that, but I don't run on my treadmill, but I do walk very quickly. I watch the news, and I frack the insanity while I'm watching the news, and it's amazing because my leg just does what it does. I mean, it's this communication and this creationship with my body
Mm,
that is so amazing. And, it's like, hey guys, hey you all out in the world, do you know that you can actually create anything? That we're actually connected to everything? And the gift of being shot by terrorists is I intimately know that now because I wasn't supposed to survive. I don't know what your point of view is about that. I know from experience that I know what I know. I can perceive, know, be, and receive that I am connected to everything, everyone and everything. And when I don't have a point of view, what comes from that is beyond this reality.
mm.
Can you speak more about that? Because here you are, your family, everybody, all the people think you're crazy because you happy. See, for me, I'm Rudrani Devi, the happiness lady. That's what I'm coined as, and then I have this book, as you know, the third
Yeah.
one, Choosing Happiness, which I brought to Italy. I don't know if you
I
remember that.
remember.
I
Yes.
had a few copies and it wasn't even available yet. And I only had the English version and they sold out.
Yeah.
And, you're an amazing little yellow book, I gotta say. Has a life of its own, speaks several languages now, getting translated into 3 others at this point. And, it's like a child, it's like a toddler running away, doing its own thing, which is so impressive to me because I can't keep up and I don't try to anymore, you know?
Mm.
So, how did you speak to those, especially like your families, because my family thinks I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs also, which is fine. I don't think any of them have ever listened to any of my podcasts, which is very interesting also because I tell stories on my family all the time, and I don't think they know because nobody's said anything yet. Maybe in the future. Who knows? And I don't care. And, I just whatever's gonna create. So when I know it's kind of a weird question because I know you don't really care, but when they ask you, "How can you be so happy? All this happened to you," and for those of you that can't see, I'm doing it in quotes, "happened to you."
Mm.
What would you share with?
I couldn't like put into words back then. I can now. I knew. So what I was doing basically is just releasing, and I didn't know what that does that mean back then because I didn't do any spirituality. I thought this table is hard, and then it's hard. That's all. We die, and then you die. So I had no interest on discovering more, and I just wanted two things in my life, no, three things in my life. I wanted money, a rich boyfriend who would afford for things for me, and I wanted a better relationship with my mom because I hated her so much. That was
Oh,
it. So when I showed up for
that's
my
not a
first
lot of asks, by the way. I mean, that's really not a lot. And even then, did you actually require any of it? I guess is
yeah,
my next
no,
question.
not really.
Right. I know.
Yeah.
True story.
Yeah. And so I was just so different, but at the same time, I had one at some point I had 1 second when I realized I did something here because so my wound was so smelly and my blood test was so bad that they
See,
told me the next morning they have to take me to the operation room because they can't save my leg. Like I will die if they don't cut it off.
right. I know
So
that. Same
yeah,
conversation
yeah.
at the
And
same
I
time.
just asked everyone to leave my room. I was like, I need space. I wasn't using this word back then, but I was like, I just want to be alone, please.
Right.
So my family left, everyone left. And I remember I did just one thing because I had an ex boyfriend who went on a couple classes with the Silva method. And so in the
Oh,
Silva method, they talk about that you have your own lab, you go down, and then you can heal your body or other people's body.
mhm.
And so I remember that he told me that, and I was like, "Oh, that was interesting. I might try that. Why not?" So whole night long, I was down in my body. I was just putting back all the bones to where it belongs, and I was just healing it with, I don't know, gold and all this stuff. And the
Right.
next morning, I woke up. So the nurse came to my room and she was asking how I'm doing. I'm like, I'm fine, thank you. She's like, okay, they're gonna take you in an hour. We just do a real quick blood test to look at everything, and then we're really sorry for you. I'm like, well, you don't really have to be sorry. And I was in peace. Like I really got to the point where I was like, if they're gonna cut off my leg, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine too. And so the lady left the room, and in 20 minutes, she's running back to my room. She's like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "I don't know why." She's like, "Okay, I have to talk to your doctor." So the doctor came into the room. Everybody's just looking at the blood test. They open my wound, smelling this thing. They're like, "It's not smelly anymore. What did you do?" I'm like, "I think I just saved my leg." And I learned later in class that this is what you do when you get into this allowance,
Right.
when you get into this state of releasing, when you are not in this resistant or need or wanting things. It's when you let those things go, then the whole new space opens up, and then you got to create the space where things can change. And that was, I realized, oh my god, I created the space where I was able to change the unchangeable.
Thank you for that. You know, it's so funny because I facilitated a class today, How to Become Money Workbook, which is what we started with. It was the second day of the class, and the topic of need came up. And it's so funny. I was like, you know that need is a fabrication. It's not even real. But if you've created it as real and true for you, well, your point of view creates your reality, and you're not going to be able to achieve or actualize whatever it is as long as you have this need in place. And maybe you have this need because your family has impaled this need upon you. Maybe it's from other lifetimes. It doesn't matter. But when you can actually acknowledge that it's not even real, then you can change it. And that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
And that's where it was with me as well. It was like, okay, they're telling me I'm never going to walk again. You don't tell me anything. I'm just
Mm.
going to say right now, I knew it was a lie because they would say, well, this is how they put it. You're never going to be able to walk unencumbered again because you don't have the twitch muscles in your legs. They cannot be reawakened. There's no way. So there's no communication. And I'm like, are y'all high? Are you kidding? Me and my body, we're laying in bed with bed sores. I'm talking to my body 24/7, and we've got to deal and deliver here, y'all. It may take a minute, but we're going to heal this stuff. And, everybody was like looking at me like, oh, I remember when I flew in from India, and it was a strange, they put me in the back of an ambulance and they had to strap me in. and I'm so tiny that the big bed they're putting me in, even with straps, I'm rolling around, so there's so much pain going on. And then we can't even get close enough to the airport to drop me off. So they're like, "We're gonna have to roll you in this makeshift bed because the thing that they had me in had legs that would open up and get taller." And they open the door, and I see all these people with, machine guns. I'm like, "Okay, I remember that." That does not make me comfortable at all, but it was the closest they could do because they had to roll me a mile and a half to get to the airport and all the stuff, and the weird part was, and this is a weird memory coming to me right now, I remember finally getting into the plane on this thing, whatever, and I'm in business class, and I hear Bing Crosby singing White Christmas.
Oh.
And I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm actually gonna go home." Wow, and it was the last flight back to the US because initially they were gonna fly me into Switzerland and have to keep me there a week, because of all the chaos that was going on. Now, India doesn't have guys with rifles and all this stuff, so even the people that were driving me in the ambulance, you could see it on their faces. They're like, "Oh my god, what is going on? Who's this American? We're all gonna get killed." And yet I'd been all over the news. I was a big story, unbeknownst to me, you know? It was just like, and then I get on that plane and all this stuff, and and they're, you'll never, and I had to fly with a doctor, and he's telling me, "You're never gonna be able to walk again, but you will be able to, you know, assisted, you'll be able to walk again," meaning whatever that means, little arm things, or I don't know what it is. And I was like, "Fuck no, dude. You have no idea." And the energy of that is exactly what I'm perceiving with you. Even your family's like, "Oh, you have no money. You have to do the hair. What are you talking about?" And you're like, "I'm not happy,
Yeah.
assholes. This isn't working for me." Right? And that's that space I came from. It's like I was willing to actually step into me. And that's what can actually change. When you're willing to acknowledge, "Hey, this isn't working for me. What else is possible? How can I change this? Can I change it? So how can I change it?" And you don't look for the answer. You're just in that space of knowing that if you're in that energy space and consciousness of asking the question, that it'll show up for you. And I admire you so much because when I listened to the podcast with Simone before I actually didn't realize that I knew you, I was like, this lady, oh my goddess, you
Mhm.
totally chose. Why do you suppose that is? I'm going to shut up now. Why do you suppose that is? I
So
mean, I know
yeah,
you're super different. Aside from that answer, why do you suppose that is?
I what I'm realizing more and more about myself, that I always had this energy to my being that people liked, and it's always been when I was a kid and also after. So so until I was like 7ish, I was kind of like unhappy kid, but at the same time, like people like to be around me. And so when I look back, it's just so weird because I see myself being unhappy and wondering about what is this life for, blah blah blah.
Huh,
And but at the
same.
same time, when I remember myself as my grandmother loved me, and the kids in the same street, they just loved me always. And when I think about when I was in high school, I was just like not a good student. I was always in trouble, but at the same time, my teacher loved me. And so
Mm,
it's kind of like I was always fighting against everything and everyone. And what I see is nobody was able to perceive and receive whatever I was. And I was always different. I remember when my parents got divorced, I was 7 years old, and we lived in a really small village in Hungary. And my class and my sister's class, we were on the same autobus. We were in Budapest for a 1 day something vacation kind of thing. And we
mhm.
arrived back to this small town, and my mom was whole packed up. The car was just fully packed, and she told me, "You're gonna stay with your dad. I'm living with your sister." So she just left, and we did not have where to go because my parents lost their house in a business decision. So
Oh,
basically,
no.
we were living with the grandparents. And I remember we were living with my mom's parents. So my dad was like, "Well, where are we going to go now?" Because we can't
Right.
go back there. What are we going to do? And so on the way to my dad's mother, we stopped by like a playground kind of thing. And I was swinging, and I remember looking at my dad, and I told him, Dad, your 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 word is just too small for me. It's always been." And my dad, every single conversation, he's telling me, "When you were 7, my word was already small for you." I'm like, "I know, Dad. It was just too small."
Mhm.
And so I did everything I could to make myself smaller than anyone. I
Huh.
did everything I could to make myself to look normal and have problems than other people. And so what I see now is, if I would be willing to show up and just show up who I am, or just show the way I am, I have so much to share with people. And
Mhm.
it's not like I'm more special than anyone else. I'm not trying to say that. It's more like
No,
I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm willing to own my uniqueness. And what I know is I'm unstoppable. I want something, I'm going for it. I'm creating it, and no one can stop me. And yeah,
same.
and so what I see is, most of the issue in my life is always roots to people who want me to be less so I can validate their stupidity. And I just don't want to anymore. And so what I'm
Right.
doing in the past 4 years is, I had one morning, I never forget that. I woke up in a morning and I had an old phone. I might told this story on Simon's podcast. So I had a really old phone. I take off from the charger, and my charger drop off to 1%. And my first thought in my head was, "Oh no, I need a rich husband or boyfriend." That was my first
I
thought.
remember this story,
And
it
I was
makes
like,
me laugh, yeah, because
so
I
I'm
have
like,
clients that still think
"Yes."
that's what they
I'm like,
require, yeah.
"What is this? Come here." So that was the first time I was sitting down with my own self, asking the question, is like, "What is this? Like, who does this belong to?" And I realized, oh, that was my mom kept telling me, and also my teachers at school is like, "Hey, Nikolett, you need a rich husband and you're gonna be fine." That
Yeah,
was what they always told me. And that was the moment when I realized, oh my God, my point of view creates my reality. This is
right.
why I don't have anything, because that's my point of view.
Huh.
And so I remember that was the first time when I was like, no, thank you. I'm going to create my own life. So I basically committed to myself and to my creations, and to the willingness to just discover what this life wants to do with me. And so in this journey, the second thing, which was huge for me, that was huge, and no one, I like, most of the people around me, they're not willing to do that, is go anyway. If they come, fine. If they don't, fine. And so I remember I had one moment when I was like, if I'm going to be single for the rest of my life, I'm not going to give up what's true for me ever again. And
Thank
I'm
you,
going.
thank you.
And so that was so huge. And this is what Gary and Dane, it's a, you go to a foundation class. This is one thing that you get, is like being willing to go even though other people are not willing to go where you are going.
Oh
Because
my
most of the
goddess.
people are like, "Oh, my husband is not willing to choose more, so that's fine. I'm gonna stay with him." Or, "Oh, my family, they're not gonna understand me why I'm doing this and that, and okay, so I just keep it small." And I remember I had no money, but I always desired more space, and I always desired to create more for myself. And I remember the first Christmas, I after my divorce, I was in Hungary, and I just wanted to be alone. So I booked a flight and a hotel in Cyprus, and I went there by myself. And my family was so pissed. They're like,
I
"What
have
are
done
you
such similar
doing?
things. So
You
funny.
Yes, you suppose like, come on, this is family time. Like, and what are we gonna do now? Like, oh, and my mother's biggest issue was, oh, I have to cook twice because you're not gonna be here, but I have to cook because you have to come on another time. I'm like, I don't have to come, by the way, one thing. And the second thing is, I'm going anyways. And I
Yeah,
got so much of the judgments, and I was like, I'm going. This is the life that wants to live in me. I'm
correct.
going. And now what happens with my family, I love them. I actually do love them. And they are like, what are you gonna do for Christmas, Nicolette? And I'm like, um, I'm staying home. And they're like, okay, so they know now that it's I wasn't choosing leaving for Christmas because I was choosing against them. I
Mm,
chose it for myself. And so
mhm,
that's what I really, like, bit by bit, I thought to them is like, hey guys, I'm not choosing against anyone here. I'm
right.
just choosing for myself. And I'm doing it anyways because I had 33 years of my life being unhappy, and I'm not doing it anymore.
I get
Even
it.
though you guys leave me, I don't care. I'm doing what right for me. And you know how much I inspired them? And my
Mm.
sister now, she's like, I don't want to go to that event. I'm like, don't go. She's like, can I say that? I'm like, yeah.
Okay. So your family's cooler than my family because, I mean, I'm choosing what you're choosing also. It's like this year for Thanksgiving, I chose to go to Maestro with Dr. Dane.
Yeah, I've been
That's
there.
what I did. I did Maestro, and then for Christmas, I was only there for Christmas Day, and the day after, I flew out to Torino, Italy, to teach a class at the castle,
At the
the Theia
castle.
castle, and to do the black tie masquerade ball with the 10-course meal and the whole thing. And I showed my sister, I remember my older sister, she's 4 years older, and I showed her my gown. I rented a gown. It's an $8,000 gown. And it's normally a $350 rental, which they will only let you have for 3 days, but I've sent so much business to people that they let me have it for 275, and they knew I was gonna be gone for 10 days. So, whatever, I showed her the dress, and not to make it wrong or right to wear sweatpants. My sister is not someone who likes to dress, and I like to dress. I'm fanciful, I have tiaras and jewelry and things, and it's not an image thing. I actually really enjoy those things. And so I got that it would be an invitation to actually show her this gown, and she knew I was leaving the next day, flying out the next day. I said, "You've got to see my gown. It's so amazing." And I could perceive the judgment on her face and also a softening because she was finally getting it. Here, I'm the one taking care of our 89-year-old mother. I'm the one that took her on out of the 6 kids, which is a relief to all of them. And here I am, fanciful, living this unbelievable life that I shouldn't be able to live as a singer, songwriter, performer, access consciousness facilitator, and I have this healing practice. How in the world am I able to take care of her, spoil her, and myself, obviously? And she just she goes, well, I imagine you're going to have so much fun. And thing is she softened in that moment. It's like what you were talking about with your family. She's not going to take an access class. I don't expect her to. I don't need her to. It was that space of she might have actually had some allowance for me in her world, which might be 10% of what this reality has allowed for. And it was interesting to watch it, because they don't get me at all. And I'm like you, I'm willing to lose all of them. We talked about it today in uh, the How to Become Money Workbook. I said, you guys, you got to be willing. You got to be willing to lose everything. Because
Yeah.
when you're actually willing to be that space, what could you possibly create? Right? I
Mhm.
mean, that's what I think I'm hearing you say. I don't want to put words in your mouth,
Mhm.
but it's like we're twinsies or something because what I'm hearing coming out of exactly what I was talking about today, and, it's that space of just being willing to be all of you without cutting your arms and legs off, even if you lose everybody. Yeah.
And my biggest realization for myself is that these people are not going anywhere. Like maybe it's gonna be weird for them at first place,
Yeah.
but then if you are not doing this against them or prove anything, you just choose for yourself from this space.
Mm.
You are going to inspire them. So, what is now happening in my family? Like they are really cool, actually, as you said, and like my parents got the space back. They don't have to prove it. They don't have to protect themselves. So what happened with my dad and mom is they can be themselves. I don't
Mm.
expect them to be something different that they are.
Yeah.
I don't try to, I had a lot of points of views about what do I think what a good mom would be look like or what a good dad would be like. And when I got to my first foundation class, I realized so András asked me one question. He was like, if you could just acknowledge your mom, what she's being right now, what would that be? And I was like, she is a fucking idiot. And she just like, she's selfish and she's this and that. And I was just like, oh, sorry, guys. And he was like, no, not, this is not your mom. This is what she's choosing. But if you
Right.
acknowledge her for that, you don't expect her to be something different. And I'm like,
Right.
oh my God, no. And I realized in my whole entire life, I was expecting her to be someone like we're going to be best friends. We're going
Sure.
to go out shopping and chitty chatting, blah, blah, blah. And then from that point forward, I never expected her to be something different than she was. And I did another thing, which is I always destroyed and uncreated everything, all my expectations with her. So when
Yep.
I got to her house, so what happened before? I got to her house, I expected her to be something. She did she perceived that and she didn't want to be that. So she had one wall, I had another wall, and we were like fighting all the time.
Yeah.
And when I stopped doing that, and I lowered my barriers and I destroyed and created everything, all my expectations with her, she lowered her barrier too. And
Mm.
so we got to each other's space more. And now what happens with each other is we have this allowance to each other. And she's like, she's so happy for me. She always telling me, especially after COVID, I have 5 siblings and everyone has kids. And she was
I
talking
have
to them
5
on the
siblings. They all have
really?
kids. I do.
Yeah.
Italians. Oh my god, go ahead. Go ahead.
And so my mom was with the other kids on the phone, and I was always the last one she called. And she called in, and I'm like, "Hey, mom, what's up?" She's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Watching TV, or I don't know, I'm doing this and that." And she was like, "Oh my god, so peaceful out there." I'm like, "Yeah, it's really peaceful here." And she's like, "You did it right. Like." You couldn't imagine what's going on in the other houses. I'm like, no, I can imagine what's going on in the other houses. And now she's like,
Yeah. Trauma drama.
she, yeah. And now she's like, she can see what my choice created. And because I am totally okay with my choices. I'm not trying to prove that it's right. I'm not trying to prove that it's not right. I'm just okay. She knows that. And now she's like so happy for me. She's like, I'm so glad you did not get kids or you don't have a family because you wouldn't be so unhappy. I'm like, I know. I always knew, mom. I
Mm.
always knew that this kind of casual stuff is not my reality. It's I
Right.
don't think it's wrong because looking at my sisters, they are so happy. Like
Yeah.
I can tell I have two sisters. They have family and kids and they are happy. That's their choice. They are
Mm.
happy. But it's not for me,
Right.
It's not for me.
Thank you for that. Just because it works for them doesn't mean it works for you. And what you choose doesn't have to work for them. And it doesn't make it right or wrong or good or bad. But we have this, I don't know, this reality impels upon us that we have to carry on the traditions of our families and what they have told us is right and wrong or good or bad. And that's the space I'm in. I mean, I love that your family is so cool. And I'm not trying to say that my family's not cool. I will say they have very different points of view about what I've chosen. I was raised Catholic, and they're all worried that I'm gonna go to hell in a handbasket, and when they say they pray for me, what I say is, "Thank you so much. I know how much you," and I just go with that because I get it. They actually whatever they're impaling, they actually, it's like that righteousness when you can see what could work for somebody, and in your point of view, it's gonna work for them, whether it's gonna work for them or not, and you're just, like, impaling and impaling and impaling, and what if it's not true for them? And, if you can be in that space of not caring or being in that space of, "Hey, you know what? Just because this works for me, it may not work for you." Even if they can't do it, reciprocate it, know that they're doing their best to, "We care about you so much, so we're praying for you." And I'm like, "Thank you. I will receive
Mm.
your prayers." Whatever that Yeah, I'm finally there without the point of view of, "They're impaling their judgments on me, and that's what." I don't care anymore. They actually do because I'm gonna put it in quotes for those of you not watching on YouTube, because they care about me. They're impaling their points of view. And because I am okay with not making it significant, it's okay. I can just go, "Thank you," and move on. And whether, you can't poke a marshmallow. They're like, "I don't know if she's getting it or not. I don't know if she's just," "We don't know. I don't know what to do." Very different family than what you have, I mean, I'm considerably older, and I have older my youngest sibling looks 20 years older than me. I mean, it's kind of interesting. It is. So, congratulations, I guess I could say, at your creation. I didn't create that, and actually, I have to I'm patting myself on the back. I have to acknowledge that I'm actually okay with my creation, whatever it is, you know?
For me, one thing was really cool when I realized at some point that, if they keep judging me and they keep trying to tell me what to do, I got to this point at one day that, what? I don't have to come here.
Yeah,
And I remember I went there and we agreed on spending a whole day together. And I've been there and I'm like, 2 hours later, I'm like, hey guys, I gotta go now. They were like, what? Like, nothing is wrong. It's just not where I want to be right now. And I left.
good for you.
Yeah. And so this is what I see. So why most of the people, why they're not happy is because they don't understand that it's not just one big significant choice.
Right,
It's a lot of small choices that you make along the way. When you go into a hotel room, it's a 5-star hotel room. You step in, you're expecting the best room because it's expensive.
right.
Step in, and then something is just not right. And you're like,
Then
this is not what I was paying for. And you don't know. And this is what happened to me when I came to Mexico City. I've been in the Sofitel. It's a 5-star hotel. I paid a lot of money for the room. I stepped in and I'm like, no, I'm not going to spend my Christmas Eve here. No. It got a view. It was huge. It's a whole suite, actually. And I went downstairs and I asked them, like, hey, you guys have another room for me because I don't want to stay in that room. They're like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't really know what, but it's just like, I don't want to be there. That's all.
right.
And so when I went back, I realized a couple of things. It was a little bit smelly in the bathroom.
Uh,
The carpet had 2 dots. Um, the room, like, and I realized this is that's what happens in life. Is like these really small things adding together creates this uncomfort. And
mhm.
most of the people super uncomfortable in their life and they don't even realize. They're like, why is that? It's because it's just a little smelly, it's just a little dirty, it's just a little not how you like. And they're like, it's not too bad. So they stay. And so that's
Yeah,
what I realized for myself is like, if I don't like a room, I change it. I don't care.
yeah,
Because no, I don't want to be in a smelly room. And it's like so interesting. So that's like people are looking for a relationship, or if I would have money that would make me happy. No, I would make you be happy is when you choose small things that are true for you, or
Mm,
it's light for you. And so that's because many people ask me about happiness, because that's my big topic too. So it's weird. It's getting too weird. I have I'm just telling you, so I have now a 3 months program called Happiness Academy. I have a Facebook group with 10,000 people called Happy Community. Everything is
Shut up.
happy. Yeah, it's
Now
funny.
you're showboating, girl. Oh my goddess. Now the happiness lady is jealous. Just saying.
So funny. And today
I'm,
I
I'm
had
gonna have
a
to sign up. So you're gonna have to tell me how I can sign up to be a part of your happiness creation,
yeah,
whatever.
it's so funny. You know why?
Hmm,
I just got to the one point. It's so cool. It's like I was wondering, like, what people want. Oh, they want to be happy because they think if they would have a relationship, they would be happy.
I
If they
know.
would have money, they would be happy. And
Yes.
what I have realized is, so people want those things because what they want in the end, they just want to be happy.
Yeah.
And then what I realized with happiness, because I love this topic, is that happiness is not a feeling. It's the space of your being. And so what
Thank
we
you.
want with wanting a relationship, wanting to have a good job, you want the space of your being. We want to go back there. We want
Yeah.
that relaxation, that space, that what makes us happy. And so creating the space, because because people are like, oh, Nicolette, if we are releasing upset or we are releasing sadness, why we are not releasing happiness or joy or enthusiasm? I'm like, because that's not a fucking feeling. That's the space of your being. That's what you are. That you
Oh
are
my
filling
gosh.
up your life with all this stuff, and then you can't be happy because too much stuff going on. And when you get those things let go, then you got the space, which is the
Hmm.
space of your being, and you're gonna be happy. That's all.
Hello.
And it's just that's what I taught today, because everyone is asking me like, what is happiness? I'm like, the space of your being.
Yeah.
That's what we all want. The purpose of life is to be happy. That's it. To have
Yeah,
fun.
it's funny you say the purpose of life. I say that it's our birthright to be happy.
Yes.
I mean, where did we get the idea that we have to create happy?
Th-
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
That's the thing that gets me like, excuse me so much? What do you mean? It's your birthright to be happy. You get trained to think you have to create happy.
Yeah.
My point of view. My point of view.
Yeah.
And I God, I love this conversation so much. And for those of you that are still listening, you are amazing because I
Thank
know it's
you.
been a long conversation. You're probably fried by now, and
Yeah.
that's okay. I can only imagine that my producer is fried because I can actually see him on camera, even if you guys cannot on the YouTube. I love you, Benny. You're the best. So I might have to have you back on the podcast. Would you be willing
Thank
to come
you.
back?
Yes.
That's so awesome. So here's the thing. You've given them so many tidbits. I'm not even going to ask you to leave them with anything as a last thought because everything that you've said has been so incredible. But
Thank
I
you.
will ask this, if they were going to find you, Nicolette, and I know this already that you don't put your last name, all the things. And just so you guys know, this lady that had no money with her family is making 8 grand plus a month with her businesses. This is what a powerful creator she is. And maybe we say that conversation for another time for those of you that have money like issues.
I like money. We can talk about money
I
anytime.
love money.
And
You have
money
no
loves me
idea.
too.
I know Vinny can't speak for us, but is she not like my twin or my daughter? I mean, like, seriously. Seriously. We love money so much. We're willing to play with it. We don't have a point of view about it. And that's why we get to create it in ridiculous abundance. And I'm in the same space. I'm creating about the same amount that you be
Wow.
also. So we won't even get into it now. That will be, I'm definitely having you back on this
Yes.
podcast.
I want to talk
So
about money. I love it.
okay, so that's happening. So stay tuned, y'all. And where can they find you, Nicolette?
So I
Please.
just launched my English website. It's
Ooh.
a nicolette.com, and it's my name is with the K, not with the C, and no E in the end.
Nikolett.
Yes, that's it. .com.
Nikolett. 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 Just so you guys, for
And
those of
then
you who are
I
trying to
have
grab a pencil, N-O-K. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
.com.
So I have a Facebook page is nikolett.com and also an Instagram account. So I'm working on the English stuff because I was mainly working in Hungary and doing my stuff in Hungary, but it's definitely growing into something else. And
Does this
yes,
book want to speak Hungarian?
maybe.
I don't know. We should talk some more, I think.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're a translator, or if you know some, but maybe it's time for
I
this
know
book.
some actually.
I don't know. Stay tuned, y'all. What are we creating? Because
Thank
we've
you for
messed
having
with some
me.
creation.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. It was a really great conversation.
Are you kidding me? And I'm delighted that I actually knew you before I knew you, because I didn't think I knew you, and then I thought I knew you, but thought it might have been a past life thing, and then I was like, oh, maybe it's present and past life. Shut up, Rue. Okay, it's okay. Anyway, thank you so much. This has been so amazing. And if you guys enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, share with others, you know, the like button below, and we will have all the info so you can find Nicolette, and you should find her. Oh my goddess, you should find her. And by the way, you should find her. So we'll have all the info there, all the things. And thank you so much for
Thank
listening.
you.
You actually made it through this whole conversation and you're not dead yet. We're impressed.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Ciao, ciao for now, y'all. Thank you so much for choosing happiness. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, share, and give us a like. And if you want more happy, subscribe to the Choosing Happiness membership, where you can play directly with me, Rudrani Devi, the Happiness Lady. How does it get any better than that?